You're out in Silicon Valley, you're visiting all of these tech companies. What are you telling them about why you did that digital tax?
Well, I think there is a global concern, both within the US, but also within Europe, on how do we set up a new regulatory framework. But there is taxation, but also privacy, antitrust, that is adapted to the new digital age. And I think that those startups and even the biggest companies, they acknowledge the fact that we need a new level playing field. But I think the real question is what is the setup of that new level playing field and at what level? That's why we are favoring an international solution. And that's true that we've been introducing a national tax, but I think the main issue that we are fighting for is to find a solution at the OECD level. And there were a lot of discussion with both the Europeans, but also the American on it.
And so do you view your tax really as a stepping stone to a broader multilateral OECD deal?
Yeah, and actually President Trump and also President Macron have agreed on the pattern last summer that would say that we have to find an international solution, that in the meantime, France would be introducing that own tax. But if there is some difference on the amount of money that the company would be paying, we would refund them if the international tax is lower. But I think the main issue is about finding an international solution.
I want to talk about that because you want an international solution. You guys have gone the route of a unilateral deal. The OECD appears to want more of a multilateral deal. Mm-hmm. Those are in conflict with each other. Has that hurt your talks and your progress with the US, with the OECD?
So far it hadn't, because there was a deal that I was mentioning this summer between President Trump and President Macron. We had that deal. I mean, that we would rather favor for an international solution, but there would be that French tax in the meantime. And if there was to be some differences, we would refund the company. So now there was that announcement from the US. But I think that the main issue is that we can find a common solution at the OECD level. And this is really what's at stake, is that there is some solutions that have been suggested by the OECD, agreed by all the country. On the technical details, France has been making a few steps forwards, many steps forwards toward the US solution. Now the question is raised to the US administration, do you agree to the solution that is on the table?
What do you want that broad framework to look like, in your opinion?
In the suggestion that was made by OECD, there are two pillars. The first one is a minimum taxation. And there are some detailed questions, but well, the basics are this is minimum taxation. Second pillar is that we have to rethink the way we assess the value of the presence of the company, not based on physical things, but also on digital footprint in some countries. And we have to reassess the way we assess the presence and the footprint of the companies, be it on the digital world, but also with other companies. That was something that was asked by the US, and that we think that now in an international world, you don't need to rely only on physical presence in one country.
How does a digital tax, though, help us deal with data privacy and antitrust?
Oh, I think those are totally different issues. I think there's a broader concern about the footprint of those companies on our economies, but also on our democracies. And there are a whole set of solutions and a whole set of things that we have to address. Privacy is one of them. Antitrust is something also, but also taxation, regulation of for instance, hateful speech and things like this. We have to rethink the whole framework of our regulation to adapt it to the new world.
So the French president has either said a unilateral deal with the US will go through, or he will look for a multilateral deal with the OECD. Which do you think is more likely to go forward at this point?
Well, I think the ball is in the US side so far. I think as soon as the US are ready to agree on the OECD solution, everything could be on the table and we can go on with the discussion. But first thing is that, do the US agree to go for the OECD solution, or shall we find something that is more European or more on a national way? I think this is the first question that is raised.
So if the US doesn't go ahead with some of the OECD's proposals, and they've instead retaliated with about $2.4 billion in taxes back on French products, are you prepared? Are those countries prepared for these retaliatory tariffs?
Actually, I think this would not be a good solution, neither for the US, nor for France, nor for the companies that are at stake. And Europe has always said that it would be favoring an OECD solution, but if the OECD solution would not be issued, then Europe would take the initiative at its own level. So I think that this is what's at stake. If there is some retaliation from the US part, I think everything is on the table. Europe has said that it would be backing up France, so we'll see. But we still hope that there's some room for discussion and that we can find a solution at the OECD level.
You say that Europe has been backing up France and wants a global solution, but frankly, you guys are the only ones really that have gone through with this unilateral tax as of yet. Do you really?
Actually, there are other European countries that have been introducing tax or that plan to introduce tax. UK is one of them. Spain is one of them. Italy, I think, already passed it law, and Austria already passed it law. So it's not only a French thing, and the European Commission has been saying, by the voice of President Ursula von der Leyen, that it wants a tax on digital companies that is adapted to that new framework, and that it is favoring the OECD solution. But would it not be adopted, then it would go for a European solution. And I think that we need to create that level playing field. The best level is at the international level, but if the Americans don't want to go for that solution, then we will go for a European one.
And you really feel that Europe is behind you?
Oh yeah, actually that was voiced by the European Commissioner on Trade, that Europe would back up France and would favor an international solution. But if at the end of the day we have to go in that discussion, then Europe would be backing France.
I want to go back to that retaliatory tariffs that we were talking about $2.4 billion in goods. Have you
That's
talked?
actually the base. I think it opens a period of discussion of 30 days, and it could be a little bit not as broad as $2.4 billion. So there is still discussion. So we don't know the setup of the would-be retaliation if they will exist.
If it's that amount, have you spoken to companies back in France? Are they prepared for that?
Actually, you're never prepared for new taxation, but well, what's important to say is that we will go for the tax. The tax will exist because this is our sovereignty. Like we can decide within the agreement, international agreement that we have within the United States, the tax convention. It's not forbidden by the tax convention. So we have the room to implement the tax. If there is a unilateral decision from the US to take sanctions, then we will see what will be done by Europe or by France. But nevertheless, I think this is not a good solution, neither for the US, nor for Europe, nor for the companies that are at stake.
How have American tech companies responded? You're meeting with Google, you're meeting with Snap. What do they tell you?
They tell us that they acknowledge the fact that we need a new international framework. And I think they are pushing for an international solution because it's easier for them to handle only one system than to handle 27 or 28 systems within Europe, or even, 50 systems all around the world. So they are really in favor of an international solution. And they acknowledge the fact that an update of the tax framework all around the world is something that might be needed.